All right, so we had to run this one back, so it'll probably be a little bit shorter than usual. As always, some technical difficulties. That's what happens when you put two meatheads behind computers, I guess. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about just different misconceptions and training fallacies that you've come across, whether it be via conjugate or
Mm.
whatnot. And before we got cut off, you were talking about how you did a quick, what is it, a ChatGPT AI search
Mhm.
on the conjugate system.
Yeah, and it talked about its success in some arenas, and it said that it was that it didn't work for raw lifters. And the funny thing about that is, if you think about it, is a lot of people think that whatever you put into AI gives you the correct answer. It just gives you it takes in information, right? And so it just shows how many strength coaches out there have put out articles and videos saying how the conjugate system does not work for raw lifters. Um, and the funny thing about it is pretty simple, and it's
You know what's pretty funny is I actually one time just did a quick ChatGPT AI search on my gym, and it actually came back that you were the owner of my gym. So congratulations on that. I don't
thanks,
know
man.
when that I don't know when
I'm
that
happy.
happened, but apparently
I
you're here more
apparently
than
have a
I am.
successful
You
gym.
know. Well, yeah, there you go. Well, you basically
Yep.
built it. Speaking of which, did you? I don't know if you've seen this shirt right here.
No, not,
So it's
but I
got
like
that
it.
conjugate built Tar Heel CrossFit. It says Ise Quam Videre on the bottom, which is the state motto. Should
Nice.
make one similar for what's the Ohio state
Yeah.
model? What is it like? I hate good weather.
Yeah, right.
Is that the
That's
state
about
motto up
it.
there?
I don't even know what the motto is. Um,
That's funny.
but so yeah, so it's funny, because we talk about these things is, out of curiosity, because I think it's funny because I hear this stuff all the time. But for people out there who don't realize the debate between there's in powerlifting, there's equipped lifting and raw lifting. Equipped, you have squat suits, bench shirts. They help you stay in the sport longer, but they can give you something out of the suit. It was designed originally for protection, but obviously people always find an advantage somewhere. Anyway, when we talk about raw lifting in the conjugate system was developed by the Russian Dynamo Club, which is an Olympic lifting club, which, just so you guys know, is raw. It was then used for other sports, track and field and sports training in Russia, which are all raw. Then later on, the
What was
Chinese
the
picked it
intent on
up.
using it in sport?
Sport. So the nice thing about the conjugate sequence system is just the way you train. It should be the way you train. The conjugate system is the only method out there that trains different types of speeds and all the qualities that we work. And so,
So
it
you mean like a
lays,
game, like a sport,
yeah, like a sport.
different speeds, right?
Exactly, right? So, sports are done at different speeds. You have some sports that have heavy loads that move at slow rates of speed. You have some that are very fast, very short. You just have all different types of situations. If you look at a football team, not every athlete's built the same. They're built for their job. A lineman, is built different than your running back. Your receiver is built different than your nose tackle. Your quarterback. Everybody has a different build and just different physical capabilities because of the requirements of the positions. Therefore, there's different attributes that are important for each one of them, each one of those positions, and we can hone into that by
Mm.
choosing the correct speeds and percentages to
I
train
think
them
you went
on.
down again.
Son of a bitch. Can you see me or
Oh,
no?
well, yeah,
Or
you're back. You're back.
I'm up.
It's that good it's that good Ohio weather just
Yeah,
fucking
right.
everything up,
But
You
that's
guys get a
basically,
little sunlight and everything shuts down.
yeah, right. Yeah, hey, you have to enjoy our 2 days a year, man.
That's right.
But that's the whole thing about the system is that we can train any type of sport because we use percentages to train speeds, and then we use our special exercises to train qualities into an athlete. Like, do we need more muscle mass, better leverage, as I would put it, or do we need to bring up strengths of muscle groups because people can't maintain perfect positions in sport because they're not strong enough in certain positions, or do they lack the ability to accelerate out of certain positions at the speeds that are required for their sport to be at a high level. And so it's very easy to use a system and pick it apart. I actually don't know how people train people for sports without it, to tell you the truth, because you have too many holes in the game. I guess it's just guess. And if you get lucky, you have the right person in front of you, and what you do with them happen to work for one person doesn't work for the next 99. But the system has an answer for everything, and it's rooted on raw. So absolutely hilarious that the system is considered not good for equipment. Now, I want you guys to understand where this argument came from. Equip lifting was basically what happened is lifting started off raw, became equipped, equipment got stronger over time. Then actual raw lifting is not that old, and it really it came out later. Because someone wanted a difference. Well, the problem is all the strongest people were lifting equipped at the time, and that's where your top coaches and stuff were. And then raw started to come up, and you have a lot of coaches who've gotten better at raw, and there's great lifters raw now. And so those numbers have come up, but it's kind of like one of those things like on Instagram and Facebook for people to promote themselves. A lot of people think they have to bash other people or what people do, and you don't have to do that. Just live through result and example, you know?
It's just it's really weird to me that this keeps coming up in
Mm-hmm.
general because I can't put a bench shirt on
Mm-hmm.
and bench 900 pounds. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. I would say I have probably one of the better benches, in
Mm-hmm.
the state, right? But I can't do what I'm doing, put on a shirt, and then magically, add 400 pounds to my bench. It doesn't work that way. Like, you have to be strong. It's just allowing, and for me, like when I see that, it's allowing people one to
Mm-hmm.
push past their limitations, but two, like you said, it keeps them
Mm-hmm.
safe. Um, like, there's a point where all this load,
Yeah.
the wear and tear on the body starts to become a real
Mhm,
issue, and you have more experience with this than I do, but when you're talking about longevity, typically it's the people who are using the gear,
mhm,
the bench shirts, the squat suits, whatever, that end up
mhm,
walking away from these things and not just
mhm.
being completely crippled at the end of it. So I
Well,
think longevity is a strong point. So even
mhm,
if you are a raw lifter,
mhm.
you should probably look at things that are going to extend you in the sport, like gear. I
Yeah,
think it
I
makes sense.
I always recommend bench shirts and briefs for people who lift raw because it will raise your numbers up way faster than if you don't use it. And then also, if you have irritated hips or anything like that, or irritated shoulders, you can throw some equipment on and work through those issues. This stuff is all it really is compression. And so for someone to look at it and say, well, how many other things do we use compression for to help keep someone safer or to feel better, right? So when you put compression around the hamstrings and quads, the hamstring is less likely to tear and rip off. And so that's where this stuff comes in and really helps
And I
out.
think it also really helps promote recovery too at the
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like when you talk about that restrictive property of it, not
Mm-hmm.
only being protective, but you think about like voodoo flossing, everybody kind of
Yeah.
understands that concept, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
wrapping something up, you take it off,
Yeah.
very simplistically, it's bringing in the groceries,
Mm-hmm.
taking out the garbage. Why would that not work for
Yeah.
putting on some briefs? And the hips, I would argue, is a very hard spot to target when you're talking about compression. I have,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm gonna need, probably a double hip replacement in my very near future, because of all the, things I did throughout my career, torn hip labrum, whatever. But if I put on a pair of briefs, I feel a lot more
Mm-hmm.
secure, and my hips always feel better after.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I hear that time and time again when I give people briefs, like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden they wear them and they go, dude, why didn't I do this earlier? Because you didn't listen earlier. It took me this long to talk you into it, or someone else to talk you into it, whatever. Well, I understand it because equipment's not cheap. It's expensive. And for someone who's never experienced it before, they're looking at the price tag and they're like, how much is it going to benefit me? Is this a tool I really need or don't need? Um, and, for a lot of people, it's a very good tool. But it is interesting to me how people think if you lift equipped, some people act like you're not strong because you're not lifting raw. And if you're raw, it just goes back and forth. It's just people doing two different things. I actually, in the world of powerlifting, I love both equally. Westside Barbell is known for equipped lifting for one simple fact. You had to understand Louis's mind and thought process. Louis was very simple. He's like, we're going to go to wherever the people who lift the most weight are and beat them head to head because we want to be the best in the world. And that's how I know we can be the best in the world. I don't want to go somewhere else, live underneath different rules, and lift with less weight and then say we're the strongest. We're not going to do that. We're going to go where the strongest people are and go head to head with them. Um, and that's just how it was. So that's where we're in equipped lifting. So, but like I said, I use this for raw lifters and equipped lifters and I had great success with it.
So you've done a lot of seminars, you've
Mhm.
coached a lot of people, you have people drop into your gym all the time. And you've seen a lot of people who claim that they're doing this system
Mhm.
and that they're utilizing it. But what are some common mistakes that you see when it comes, whether it be not addressing the speed work appropriately, not rotating the maxes, special exercises, not understanding the intent? Like, what are the biggest things that you see go wrong here with this system?
There's a famous saying out there that if you didn't train at West Side, you don't know West Side, and where that came from is there's a lot of coaches that program the conjugate system for a long time. Like, oh, a lot of them will say they train at West Side. Really, what they were a lot of times were drop-ins. They came in, for a weekend, or they would train there once in a while, like because they were friends with somebody who was there, but they didn't actually train West Side. And, you always want to get as close to the well of knowledge as possible, right? Like if I want to learn jujitsu, like best person for me to learn jujitsu from is like Hickson Gracie, right? Like get as close to that well of knowledge as possible. And so we want to do the same thing. And so we see a lot of mistakes because people aren't programming it correctly and they're not executing it correctly. So the biggest things I see is execution. So one, not hitting giving everything you have on a max. You want to put everything have on the max without missing. That's the key point, without missing. Hit the biggest max you can that day without missing a weight. Okay. So people train until they fail. If you train until you fail, you'll teach yourself how to fail and you get really good at failing. Congratulations, but that's not my goal. So I trained the heaviest weight we can hit. This does a few things for us, allows our nervous system and allows our body to recover. We're not exceeding our capacity. When you train a failure, you're literally training past your body's ability, right? You do that every week. It's not hard to think it won't last long. It's no different than if you had a car and the bolts in your engine were designed for 30% less power than you're running in your car, probably not going to last long. You want to stay within a range. That's why your vehicle's engineered to have percentages above what your intended use is. Okay. So same thing with a person. We don't want to exceed our capacities over and over again. Eventually it's going to bite us. It's not hard to figure that one out. So hit the biggest weight you can hit that day and walk away. When you show up to your max day, we do one lower, one upper body. Treat it as if it was a competition. If you were in a powerlifting meet, that means we warm up as if we were in a meet. We take the same amount of jumps as if we were in a meet. We don't take small jumps. We take big jumps. And by getting used to taking these bigger jumps, you have less sets in and you can get a bigger weight at the end of that. If you don't warm up optimally, you won't have an optimal result at the end of it, right? So I watch a lot of people, when you compete, most people don't compete that often, especially at a high level. In powerlifting, if once you're one of the best in the world, you're once to twice a year. Below that, I didn't like my athletes doing more than 3 a year because you need time to get stronger. And when you're competing, you're not getting stronger, right? So um, when you're looking at,
A lot can be said about that right now.
yeah, right.
Ugh.
Yep. So, it's just one of those things that uh, we have to optimally hit our results. And if you do what we do, you literally do it's like doing 2 meets a week because when you show up to a competition, you'll have warmed up and executed, taking the same amount of jumps as if you were in a competition. So when you show up to a competition, it should feel very comfortable. If you've been with me for a year, twice a week for a year, you've trained as if you're competing. So if you look at the amount of repetitions you have in competing in, someone else who shows up who's done 3 meets, but they've also only 3 times before the meets worked up to openers or whatever. So they have 6 times. That's the like they've done 3 meets, you've done one, but they've only actually had 6 times they've practiced. You've had that in 3 weeks. Literally after 4 weeks, you've out practiced them. You've had more opportunities, right?
Yeah, there's one thing that keeps coming up as I talk to more gym owners and more people about this system, um, that makes me just realize that they don't understand it
Mm,
at all, is they wanna ask, "Hey, what is the one bar?" Or, "What is the one would you rather have bands or
mm,
chains? Would you rather do this?" Or I wouldn't rather have anything. I'd rather do the
mm,
program the way it was designed and have
yeah.
all the equipment that I can fit in my gym,
Mm,
that the program requires. Because here's the thing, it's like you said earlier, the closer to the well of knowledge, the closer to the
mm,
source, the better chance you have to actually do the thing the way it was designed to do. So if I'm saying, okay, I don't have a cambered bar, but I used a safety squat bar,
Mm,
it's basically the same because it's different than a straight
mm,
bar. Well, not really, because we're going to work
mm,
that other bar into rotation, and each one of these bars have a
mm,
specific purpose. The bands have a specific purpose. The chains have a specific purpose. The inverse curl has a specific purpose
mhm,
comparatively to the GHD. Not saying that every gym needs to go out there and get an
mhm,
inverse curl, but like if you're gonna do this, you need to think about how much can I actually get out of this system by doing it the correct way. Yes, you're gonna have to sacrifice. Not everybody can have.
mm.
I don't even know where they make plyo swings anymore these days. So I don't even know how I would get one.
Yeah,
Uh, but I
technically,
do
I
want one.
think, well, Rogue has the rights to all the West Side stuff. So I
Okay.
think you might be, I don't know if they make them. They might be able to special order one. I know that some of the equipment that Westside had that is a little less known, that they'll wait till they get enough orders in and they'll make a run of them, you know? I don't know if Plow Swing's one of them or not. Um, I thought they did make one, but I could be wrong about that.
But,
But
yeah, I have
either way,
inverse
it's not easy
curls,
to
leg
find, right?
presses, yeah,
So,
leg presses, standing ham curls, like all these
yeah.
different things. Like, do I need all of that?
Hmm,
Debatable, right? It
yeah.
depends on how much, for me as a coach, as a strength coach, I want the best for my athletes.
Hmm.
If there's a tool that I can use to get after a specific issue, I want to have it at my disposal. So, the more that you know about this system, and if you're not looking to sub things out all the time, and you're actually doing it, you actually understand what that exercise was designed to
Mm,
do, why that was put in there.
yeah.
Shane's very deliberate about the exercise selection in this program that we have. So if it's saying this, there's a reason.
Mm,
If you looked, if you guys were able to look on the backside and see the spreadsheets that we have for years, and we go through line by line, up, down, across, and we're constantly analyzing things, and we have a way forward, and we have a year plan, specific goals that we want to hit at specific times. All those things are mapped out well in advance. Um, so when you start changing things because you don't have the equipment or because you don't feel like setting up the equipment or whatever the case, you're missing the bigger picture, which may be 6 to 12 months down the road, you know?
well, you know, coming up at Westside Barbell, one thing Louis hammered home was everything was about being optimal. Everything. The optimal amount of equipment in your gym, the optimal execution of exercises, the optimal exercise selection, optimal recovery. Like everything was about that, right? Which, if you think about it, pretty simple it should be. So, that being said, like I couldn't open with every piece of equipment I wanted when I opened my gym, but the minute I had a chance, I kept adding to it. So the question is, should I use this or that? The question should be, okay, here's where I'm at right now. I have X amount of money to deal with. What gives me the most bang for my buck? What can I use the most in programming? And then work your way backwards from that. You have to realize and understand what type of gym you want to have. If you don't have the money to start off with everything, no problem. Almost nobody does. But at the end of the day, I wanted to produce world record holders, world champions, and I did that. But I also built my gym to have equipment that I can train anybody for any sport. I can train for any sport and get someone to the highest level in any sport if they're capable of it. And but that was my goal. So you have to realize if you don't invest into your gym with the right exercise or selection of equipment, that you'll be at a certain level and you'll stay underneath. You might produce one athlete that does great, but you're not going to produce multiple athletes to do certain levels. And it's not just about sports performance, because some people go, well, that's okay. Like I don't have to have games competitors or world champions, world recorders. That's okay. That's fine. You should train who you want to train, where you want to be. But it does mean that you increase chances of injury. Okay. And so these bars that we use aren't just for performance, they're just equally as important for injury resiliency, um, keeping problems from happening. So the use of bands, chains, the specialty bars are just as much longevity as performance. So longevity should make everybody's, ears perk up when they hear that.
And that's a really important thing too, is because like you're looking at these exercises, and if you don't know, the bars, or you don't know what
Mm,
they do, or you don't know what this specific exercise is designed to do, it may seem a little gimmicky. But we're trying to hit that joint at as
mm,
many angles as possible. We're trying to strengthen
mm,
everything around that. Like you said, for longevity. And here's the reality: if you have people in your gym that can't do a specific low skill movement,
mm,
like a pull up, or they can't squat
mm,
with good technique, and you're just constantly doing the same things over again, that's literally the definition of insanity.
mhm,
And fortunately, I was going to say unfortunately, but I'm going to say fortunately, there's a time,
mm,
a time component that's working against people like that, because they're going to find gyms that can deliver results, and
mm.
they're going to go there. So, I can't imagine that I would spend my money on a product that doesn't yield the results that I want long term.
Right now, and who knows, like, politically, like how the world's going to look. What I'd say is right now, for quite a few years, things have been expensive. The cost to go into the gym is going up. People aren't there. The amount of money people are making is not going up at the same rate as fuel and food and basic costs, right? So what you have to realize, if that trend stays for an extended period of time, most, some of the gyms are going to go away, and the gyms that are going to go away are the ones that are not performing, the ones that are not as fun, don't have as much variety. The gyms that have great equipment, have great programming, have all their stuff together. Like, I go to Justin's gym, and Justin has a great gym. He has, great employees. The gym's always clean. He has tons of equipment. The atmosphere is phenomenal. So gyms like his, I don't worry about. It's gyms that are on their way up that maybe don't have a good exercise selection or don't have good programming. Um, or maybe they just haven't been in the game as long, so they're not as structured as Justin is, or they don't have the schedule down pat to where it makes complete sense and it works like a well-oiled machine. And all those things take time. What I'll tell you is, if the economy stays the way it is, I would say you have less time to get the right equipment and get the right programming and get things going. You have to show why there's a reason why you're a separator and you're different if someone has to stick
Well,
around.
and I think that's what differentiates us too from, other
Mm,
programs and people in the market, is we aren't going to sit here and sell you a bucket of lies and things that we don't
mm,
do ourselves, right? Like, we are a results based facility, both in Ohio and in North
mm,
Carolina, and those results speak for themselves. This isn't a flex or a brag. I don't think Shane
mm,
could put together a Google or a Facebook ad if his life depended
mm.
on it, So, like, the marketing is the word of mouth. The marketing is the results. And, those results come from, like you say all the time, one, you got to have that atmosphere, right? That
Mhm,
atmosphere, it's contagious. It's People are going to come to
mhm,
the gym if they want to come to the gym, right? You got to give them a reason
mhm,
to want to come to the gym. The atmosphere that you create is going to be one of those things. Too, there's that time component, right? If people aren't getting value out of what you're doing because you're not growing, and you've grown and shared all the knowledge that you have with that athlete, and that's not saying like that you withhold an information, right?
mhm,
It's saying that, hey, you should have already been at a higher level, and you should be continuously evolving every single day, every single week, at the rate that that athlete is, at least, so that you can stay ahead of them, so that you can
mhm,
continue to offer value, right? And then lastly, like you say, it's the equipment element. So we're not saying, you go out and you buy yourself a monolift,
mhm,
12, 13 safety squat bars, that it's going to fix your culture problem, right?
mhm.
But if you have
Correct.
those other two components, right, and then you have the equipment
Mhm,
alongside of it, you don't have to
mhm.
do anything. Like, I
Yeah.
would be hard pressed to find a gym globally, a CrossFit gym globally, that has more Google reviews than we do, and like,
Mhm,
we didn't do anything for those other than deliver a really good product at the end
mhm.
of the day. And that that goes back to that culture element, but then it goes back to the knowledge aspect, and then like, hey, we're continuously bringing things in and figuring out what things can we maybe move that don't add as much value, and rotate some things. And I got a Connex full of equipment at
Mm-hmm.
this point,
Mm-hmm.
in the back of the gym, and some things I just rotate in and rotate out, and people don't even know, but
Yeah.
it's not saying like, hey, just because I'm not using that bar or that thing right now doesn't mean it's going to go to waste. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not for where we're at right now at this phase, but somebody needs it, so why would I get rid of it?
You
If I
know,
have a tool at my disposal to make Shane be able to do something pain free, or to be able to gain a range of motion, like,
mm-hmm.
that's quality of life stuff. Whether he's trying to compete again, or he just wants to live life independently, if I have a tool at my disposal, um, and I'm not giving it to people, I can't be mad when they leave.
You know, yeah. I mean, you look at like say Justin's gym. He's right by a military base. Literally, if you don't do your best for for a client, it could cost them their life. You injure somebody and they have to go out in the field and go do something while they already have an injury that holds them back a little bit. You run them into the ground. You don't get enough result for them. Sorry, this is life, man, and it sometimes will cost somebody their life. It might cost the individual he trains their life, or maybe their best friend or someone who's in the unit with them that runs into something they could have potentially helped if they were just a little farther along. So, don't take your job easy as a strength coach. Your job literally is quality of life. Um, your job can be the make or break for somebody, and so we want to be on top of it. And Justin brought up a great point, man. Um, think of all the like think of CrossFit, how fast CrossFit's evolved, right? The games are constantly evolving every year. There's always new things coming up. All jobs out there, things are always evolving, right? So when you always want to put a weight, I'm gonna wait. Maybe I'll wait to do program. I'm thinking about doing this program and learning from it. Maybe I'll wait. I should pick up this book and learn about the Conjugate system. Uh, I'll think about it. Yeah, should I get these specialty bars? I really don't know if they're going to do enough for us to try and experiment. Do you want to read something? Like, do something. By the time you realize that you need to do it, people are going to be too far ahead of you to catch up. And Justin's point, which is phenomenal because it's something I've talked about in seminars, and I'm glad he brought it up, is that, when you're working with people, you need to give them a reason for you to be their coach, right? And atmosphere is one of them that you give them. But the big thing is a knowledge base. If they can come to you and you're always ahead of them in knowledge, and you should be, it's your job. So if someone goes and they're learning stuff on their own because they're thinking, oh, eventually I'll train myself, but I need a coach at first till I learn. That's great. And if they don't have the money, that's cool. But you should also, if they do have the financial ability to keep a trainer, you should give them plenty of reasons why it is just better to stay with you, because that is better for them. If they can go on their own while working a full-time job and not being a coach themselves because they can achieve the same result you can as a coach, you're failing as a coach. You should have been educating yourself and evolving as you go. And, start with education. And that's where I tell people like, hey, you want to do a counter system? Do the programming for a little bit. And I'm not trying to sell you on it. I don't say you have to do it for the rest of your life. Do programming, read these books. I'll tell you what books to read. And when the programming makes complete sense to you, program for yourself. That's fine. Or program for your athletes. But now you've seen a roadmap. You've seen how it's laid out. Sometimes people read the book and they're like, man, all these things sound great, but they don't know exactly how to put it together. That's where you follow the program for a little while. Read the book, see what we're doing. It'll make sense. And then you'll understand how to do it yourself. Now you've leveled up. And you're giving information to your clients they've never even heard of, and they can tell friends they have. If you have clients that are trained with you, they probably have a friend that trains somewhere else, and they're going to talk to their friends and like, oh man, my coach, man, they gave me this. They'll tell them about something you fixed or helped them with, or took care of an injury, and they're thankful for it. And their friends are, well, how'd they do that? And they tell them like, man, I've never heard of that before. That gets them interested. They might want to come check the gym out. Stay ahead of your athlete. They deserve it. You need to do it because that is your job.
It's funny too, because I can, and you've done this before here, and I've seen it at your gym, but you can walk out there at any given time in my gym, and you can tell who's been here and
Hmm.
who's been doing the system.
Mm-hmm.
and who is new here because, like Shane said, I'm in a military town. This whole town changes over every 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
constant churn rate. But you can tell right when you walk in the gym who's new and who's not just by the way they
Mm-hmm.
look and the way they move.
100%.
And I always tell people because we're doing our onboarding, they're looking at Sally or they're looking at whoever, and they're like, wow, they're so fit, they look so good, blah blah blah. And I'm like, and they're like, I'll never look like that, I'll never be like that. And I was like, yep, they said that 12 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
or they said that 6 months ago or whatever it was. And, I tell people the same thing every single time. Somebody is going to come here in the future. They're going to see you working out and they're going to think, wow, I really want to be like that person.
Mm-hmm.
So, every single one of these athletes in my gym is my best source of marketing. I don't have to go much further. If somebody walks in, catches me, in an off hour when I wasn't prepared, they're like, "Hey, I want to go check the gym out." And I walk out there and there's a class going on, and they just look around and they see everybody and they're like, "Yep, I'm ready. I'll sign up." It's
Mm-hmm.
uh it's pretty obvious that the results are
Yeah.
there, right? You can see that in people, and you can even see it through the different stages when people are losing weight, and you can start to see the muscle transforming, see the confidence coming up, the lifts are going up, everything's going up. People who had back pain don't have back pain.
Mm-hmm.
People who have knee issues can now squat to depth, all those things. Like, yes, I selfishly, I love, to see how far I can push human potential, whether that be on the military side of things or on the sports side of things. Um, but like you said over and over again, like this doesn't just work for the highest levels. It would be foolish to think that it works at this level and doesn't work down here as well. So everybody gets a benefit off of not only the system, but off of using various tools. And the more tools, like I said, that you have at your disposal, I just think it keeps people interested, it keeps them
Mm-hmm.
healthy, and it keeps them growing at the fastest rate possible.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's exactly what it does, and the thing is, like, I knew I leveled up as a coach when I went to Westside. Not right when I got there. I was learning, obviously, right as soon as I got there, I was learning a ton of stuff. But I leveled up as a coach once I could differentiate those qualities to where I'm like, oh, I know how you train. That's when I knew I was a different level coach, right? And that was the beginning of really taking off to another level. And you think about Justin, like before we met, and then once you got into the system, you see those qualities. You can't hide it. Like you walk in, you put 50 people in a room, you give me one person who's doing conjugate the right way, and I'll point out 100% of the time, every time who's doing it, because their quality of movement is so much better. And there's little qualities that if you don't do this program or this type of training, you will not possess. But the people who do always possess it if they've done it long enough and trained it correctly.
So that's another misconception that I've heard too is that, and this may have come from the earlier days watching West Side lifters warm up. Maybe you can tell me more about that. But
Mm,
people say that, they don't care. All we care about is numbers, right? All we care about is
mm,
chasing numbers. We don't care about technique.
mm,
Which, in certain systems, I think you could probably make that claim.
mm,
But if you didn't really care about technique,
mm,
how the hell would you be able to lift that weight safely? Like, there's only so much of
mm.
compensating and being in shitty positions that joints, ligaments, tendons,
Yep.
bones will be able to withstand. So I'm sure you've heard that one too. So I'm just curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, a million times. Yeah, so here's the interesting thing. Yeah. I mean, anybody who knows me, like me, like if I'm not a stickler for technique, that's my job. Like my eye for little mistakes in a bench, in a press movement, in a squat, in a deadlift variation, like I am looking for little nuances that no one picks out because I have to gain an advantage with my athlete. So I need perfection. You get two people who are just as strong as each other. The person who has better technique is going to win. That's just how it is. So technique is huge. Where that comes from is pretty simple. Once you learn what speed can do for you for your max lifts, you don't ever want to back off the throttle. So people would watch West Side lifters in a warm-up room, and they'd accelerate weight so violently fast that it would throw them off position a little bit. But this is a submaximal load, and nothing they're even worried about at all will hurt them. And they'll look and they would make remarks like, "Man, they're just so strong, but their technique is horrible." They clearly don't care about it. But then you watch them on the platform and then their technique looks really good. And what it is they needed enough weight on the bar to slow it down enough to make it real crisp and clean. They're
To keep
not,
their body on the pads, right?
yeah, they are not.
To keep
Because I
that
remember the
deadlift
first
from looking
time
like a Dimmel. They just
I
needed enough
watched a
weight.
West Side Lifter, and they were warming up in a bench, and they had 405 in the bar, and they snapped it up real quick, and it pulled their back about 2-3 inches off the bench. And you're looking, and people are like talking about how like bad technique, and I'm sitting there going, you just realize the only reason why that 405, why his back came off the bench, is because he accelerated that weight so hard that if his hands weren't holding on to it, he would have threw it. But since his hands was holding on to it, it pulled his body off the bench too. Like, do you even possess or seen somebody who has that kind of speed before? You know? So while I'm not telling you to have your
Serious
back come off the
triceps.
bench, I'm telling you that it was a quality that was built in that a lot of the guys at first, when those qualities start coming up, it took them a while to make adjustments to their speed work, but they didn't want to slow his speed work down because, if they're going for an 1,100-pound squat, their 700-pound warm up, they're putting 1,100 pounds of force into that thing because one, they're having that bar on their back for less time. Two, it builds confidence to them. Boom, they have that snap and speed. They feel strong and they love that feeling, right? Like you would love that feeling too. So it gave the misconception that we don't care about technique. What I would tell you is most people who say they care about technique do not care about technique as much as they say they do. And here's why I would say that. Because we look at technique different than you. You look at someone who's weak and you try to figure out how to get a weak person with a bunch of faults to do something perfect. I would tell you that's foolish. That's like taking a Formula One car that, the suspension's off, it's not dialed in, the engine hasn't been properly tuned, and say, okay, look, the tires aren't optimal. There are 4 different size tires on it. The suspension hasn't been set up and it hasn't been tuned yet. But you better have perfect cornering technique. That's absurd. It's a joke. It's literally laughable. So when you follow these programs that like almost only, like say for powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, it's like, oh, we're going to do a full meet 3-4 times a week. And they don't do accessories. You don't care about technique because you have to optimize the athlete for what they're about to do. So I need to have optimal mobility in the joints to achieve optimal position. I have to have optimal strength to maintain optimal position. And then I have to be able to produce enough force to get the job that we want done, to hit the numbers that we want. So 80% of our volume is accessory movements. Accessory movements are picked for a few different reasons: to optimize leverage and optimize strength. That means when I see you have a fault, I choose my exercises to clear that fault. For one person, we might not want to make them bigger. They might be as big as we need them for their sport. So we use it to get the muscle group stronger. For some people are like, look, they're new in their sport. They haven't grown into their build for the size they need to be the best in the world. So I'm going to use rep schemes to produce muscle mass to optimize their leverage. And then we can adjust the rep scheme to get more strength out of those positions. Okay. So if you're not first optimizing your athlete for their sport before you're really trying to hammer their technique, you're in the wrong game. Now, don't get me wrong. I am trying to optimize someone's squat while I'm fixing it, right? But I see a lot of coaches like, okay, we're just going to work on technique. Once your technique's perfect, then we're going to start loading you and doing all these other things. No, you need to optimize the athlete by strengthening them, optimizing their leverage, and making sure they have full range of motion for every movement that's required of them.
Another one that I think people kind of bastardize when they don't understand this concept is Dimmels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we posted a video recently on social media of one of your athletes doing Dimmels, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
commented that it looks like a retarded RDL.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was kind of funny. I mean, I guess maybe, but
Kind of
right
does.
there's yeah, it kind of does. So I couldn't like argue with him. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it kind of looks like a retarded RDL.
Yeah.
But not understanding the intent there, right? And there's more. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's quickly accelerating through that upper portion and snapping the hips.
Mm-hmm.
But if people don't understand, a ballistic Dimmel and the amount of core strength it takes
Mm-hmm.
to be able to hold that load and the spinal factors how strong you have to be throughout your back to do a ballistic demo. So yes, you're training that speed like you're talking about, but we're also training the midline as well. Like it is when I do heavy demos and I'm doing them ballistically, my abs are so sore the next day because I'm contracting so hard. It's like I just did 100 toe to bar or something. It feels crazy.
Yep.
Um, so that's one thing. But then, like if people, they haven't been taught by you, or they haven't, been in that system, they haven't been around Lou, they haven't been around other people. A lot of things that I see is where people are, instead they're forcing the bar to come off by
Correct.
overextending. So they're sacrificing the lower lumbar, or they're doing like a bent knee position where they actually go into like a muted hip. And then they're like adding this hitch to make the bar shoot out. And that's not actually what's happening there. So,
Yeah. Well, in a demo, that's a great example, right? So the example when he was talking about a demo where people over exaggerate the hip position, that's exactly what we see out of Olympic lifters who are weak. Olympic lifters who are weak will over exaggerate a hip position so they can get a little more weight on the bar, but then the bar doesn't go anywhere for a long period of time because they actually have to fix the problem they have, right? Just because you're good at you move good weight at Olympic, but it doesn't mean you have strong hips. Sometimes you have good technique where you carry enough speed through your hips, but it's still holding you back, okay? So if you see over-exaggerated hip position in an Olympic lifter, a lot of times you have to look at their glute and hip strength. When it comes to a demo, yeah, you lower the bar like a Romanian deadlift, position-wise, right below the knee. But you do it ballistically. You drop it as fast as you can. Once you're good at it, you'll pick up speed over time. When you're good at it, you drop it down as fast as you can. And once it clears your knees, you reverse it as hard as you can. And then the common mistake after that is people want to go onto their toes to create speed like Olympic lifting and shrug. And I don't want toes and shrug. That's for Olympic lifting. What I want is to work how fast you can pop your hips and get your hips driving forward. So don't go on your toes. Once it clears your knees, ballistically change direction as fast as you can. And I want you to squeeze and snap your hips so they hit the bar and the bar pops straight away from you. It's the hips hitting the bar that causes it to go away. You're not moving the bar away from you like a kettlebell swing. You are literally causing it to happen by how fast you contract your glutes and your hips.
So, now that we're talking about demos, you look at somebody's deadlift and you pick it apart and you say, hey, they're maybe slower at lockout, so you might prescribe demos over one movement, right? I think that people also don't understand maybe the prescriptive nature. So, hey, if you're struggling at heavier weights, we might reduce the rep scheme, increase the weight so that you can spend more time and tension at heavier loads, or we might use it for, twofold, right? To not only strengthen up the hamstrings, but, hey, do 20 demos in a row and see how you feel. Tell me if you're not breathing hard. That's conditioning. I have CrossFitters, high level CrossFitters, who will do, our we call it grind work in the programming, and they are huffing and puffing like they're doing a Metcon after doing 20 demos in a row. It's not easy by any means.
No, 100%. So a lot of stuff is, you said it is like conditioning, but it is training multiple different qualities. And, people realize like, okay, we look at a deadlift and generically, if you're slow off the ground, the first place we're going to start is your abs and your hamstrings. If you're in a deadlift and you tend to miss around knee height, we're looking at your glutes, if you're doing sumo and you shift left to right, I know you have weak hips. Bench press, if you're slow off the chest, let's say your technique is perfect. If you're slow off the chest and your technique is perfect, then we have to look at your back. If you have a hard time locking out, we're looking at your arms, or your triceps, I should say. And so we just look at where the bar slows down or where you break position at, and we can make adjustments and get someone to move wherever they want to. What we don't do is take weight off the bar, have someone lift a lower weight for a long period of time, trying to perfect an imperfect structure. You would never see someone give me the best race car driver in the world and say, do you want to start off with a perfect structured car, or do you want to start with one that has problems? We'll just figure out how we go. They want perfect structure because then they can put all their time and effort into accelerating forward. We want a bigger base for a taller pyramid. Okay. To build a bigger base, First, optimally be able to achieve position, any position required of your sport, and then be able to optimally accelerate out of that position and maintain that position. Those are the things we need out of you for perfect technique. So until you can attain perfect position, until you can maintain perfect position, you're not in the game. We got to structurally optimize you for that first.
I was just having this conversation actually with one of the athletes before this, and this person's a veteran, got kind of banged up while they were in the military, and they were asking, they were like, hey, I've been doing this, special exercise trying to rehab my shoulder. I'm feeling it here, not feeling it there. And, I've said this countless times, and I've probably said it on here too. Like, hey, if that one exercise isn't working for you, get rid of it and find something that is. That's the system, right? I don't ever want you to get good at accessory work. I don't ever want you to get good at those things. I want to challenge you. Like, yeah, it's not say that maybe it's a throwaway movement. Like, obviously that movement's valuable if we're using it in the programming, but it might not be valuable for where your range of motion's at right now. It might not be available, because of your stability or your strength in that area. So maybe we try something different. And
So,
people understand that, right? They understand that when it comes to CrossFit. Shane comes into the gym. He can't do pull-ups. Okay. Well, what can you do? We're going to find something that he can do that we can elicit a similar strength. Maybe, okay, we have him do some ring rows. Even though it's a different pulling plane, we get him pulling. Maybe we do some banded assisted. Then we start working on maybe some negatives. People understand that when it comes to traditional movements in CrossFit, like pull-ups. But then when they look at the squat or the deadlift, they're just like, oh, we need to play around with position. Well, how about we break that thing down a little bit? The same way that you broke down that pull-up, we change the angles, and then we come back and we retest and we see if it's any better.
Yeah, we retest everything. Science, right? Weird. We try to disprove everything. We retest it. Every day I'll work on trying to disprove the conjugate system. Louis did every day. And the reason why is because, like Louis said, he's like, I would love to disprove my system because that means I found the next new system that's even better. And it's all about performance and result. And if someone else comes out with a system that's better than mine and they disprove my system, he's like, I'm going to be the second person doing their system. And I'm going to figure out how to do it as good as them. Then I'm going to figure out how to beat them at it and how to evolve it.
Greg
Conjugate's
Glassman
like,
used to say something similar at the seminars where he would say, if someone beats us at our own game, they win the CrossFit Games. And we interview them, we find out that they were doing hula hoop and rollerblading around the neighborhood. Guess what the workout tomorrow is going to be? So like at the end of the day, like real strength coaches really only care about one thing, and that's results, right? We're chasing results, and at the highest level, at the lowest level, I want results. How many? All of them. People come in and they want to sign up for this program and that program and all these different things that we offer at the gym. I'm like, hey, how about we just start coming a couple times a week? Because what I don't want you to do is spend a bunch of money, get burnt out, and find an excuse to quit.
Yep.
I don't want your money. I want your results. And I tell people that all the time. They look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, hey, look, I can sell you $600 of supplements right now, a personal training pack. By the time we walk out of here, we can make it real expensive, but it's only going to last a month. And you're not going to get what you want out of it.
If they would stay and use all of it, it would work great. But you got to get them, you don't want to jump them into something that's over their head, right? And you're not trying to rip them off. The conjugate system's like the first Fast and Furious, right? When Dom's in the garage and they pull up and he's like, you got to get that car ready. He's like, if you can't find the tool that you need for that car, you don't belong in a garage. The same thing with the conjugate system. If you can't find the tool that you need to fix your problem, you are not doing the conjugate system. I'm telling you right now that it's not a failure in our system. It's a failure of lack of knowledge of how to read the athlete, or a lack of tools and what accessories to pick for the athlete, or understanding what those weaknesses are. But trust me, we have a tool for every problem. You just have to know how to use the tool and know the proper tool for the problem, okay, and how to diagnose it. And that's why we talk about on here a lot. It's kind of mistakes that we make, is because of that.
And it's still being evolved, through what you're doing, through what John's doing with reactive strength. The system is constantly growing, and it should. And that's the thing too, that if you believe what you're doing is time tested and true, and there's no room for improvement, that just means that you stopped learning.
Yeah.
Right. This system, albeit has produced arguably more world records and more champions in sport than any other system out there,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean it's maybe necessarily perfect or it's arrived
Mm-hmm.
because you're still tinkering with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
And you
always
were
will be.
able to, yeah, Lou was doing 12 by 1 and then you changed it up to 9 by 3, got a similar
Mm-hmm.
result. People were finishing faster, they were able
Mm-hmm.
to strain longer,
Mm-hmm.
so constantly tweaking with those things little by
Mm-hmm.
little, as long as you know why you're doing it, you
Yeah.
understand the system and you know why you're tweaking it. I think that there's, a lot of benefit to having more people,
Mm-hmm.
try these things,
100%.
but what we've seen anecdotally is we have people all over the world
Mm-hmm.
with gyms. Gyms who've subscribed to the programming literally all over the world. We have athletes literally all over the world who have subscribed, and I haven't heard anybody say that they just weren't getting results.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or they get
Almost
bored.
always when somebody signs up, they're just blown away that they're
Mm-hmm.
just progressing as fast as they
Yeah.
are. And I have to, hey, great job. Hey, don't skip the accessory work,
Yeah.
right? Because I can look in my crystal ball and see, like, hey, you got greedy. You got some
Mm-hmm.
results. You started skipping things. You started doing the
Mm-hmm.
sexy things. And then you started
Yeah.
focusing on competitions. And, if you're not careful, whether it be powerlifting
Mm-hmm.
or, fighting, or if it's, especially with jujitsu right now, there's like a tournament, it seems like every other week.
Yeah. Right.
CrossFit, you have all these qualifiers. You can spend more time doing qualifiers and competitions than actually training
Mm-hmm.
and fall behind. So
Easily.
yeah, and like for me, you got to, like I tell people, hey, you got to kind of be selfish with your competitions.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a couple, do a couple, but understand if you find yourself, having to stop training or modify training for a period of time because of a competition, um, maybe something's off,
Mm-hmm.
right? We keep our athletes peaked year round. Tina
Mm-hmm.
will take. She goes, like when we're in peak season and she's really hitting everything up hard, she just doesn't do two metcons a day. She does more
Mm-hmm.
strength work, more speed work. She does
Yeah.
more of the accessories. She still does her metcons before she, goes out there, whatever. But there's not a point in the year where we just don't do something because we need to
Yeah.
deload. If you're deloading, that means that you did something seriously wrong in your training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not always. There's trauma and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like, especially in my gym with the military folks,
Mm-hmm.
they might have a 24-hour duty or life might get in the way. But hey, if all things considered are perfect and you're needing to deload, that might be an issue.
Yeah. No, 100%. We only deload for competition. I mean, obviously you deload if someone's not recovering fast enough from the training, and that's what, Justin's talking about. We deload for a competition, but since we're deloading for a competition, that's why we can't train, you can't compete all the time because you're not progressing while you're deloading, you know? And we always said at Westside, we could be ready for any
What does
competition in three
deload
weeks
look
because
for
we're always in
you?
shape.
Yeah.
It's roughly, okay, all sports
So
are a little
what does
bit
deloading
different.
look like for you? Because this is something that I think also is
Mm,
misunderstood, because your deloading probably wouldn't look like deloading to the average powerlifter, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so
They
basically
completely take time off.
yeah, you're right. You're never the athlete your training has meant you to be until you've fully recovered from your training, okay? So that's where we said we'd always be in shape. We can compete within 3 weeks anytime because after 3 weeks, what we do is we hit a peak, and then 3 weeks out, we start lowering our volume, but we keep volume in. So what we do is we lower intensity so our nervous system can recover. We start going in a little more blood flow as we go. So 1 week out, we're still training our accessories heavy, but once we get past all of our heavy lifts, we hit openers for like a meet. Okay, our experienced lifters don't do this. Lower level lifters will hit like an opener, so it's like 90% of something, and then the next week they're gonna hit percentages. They're not working up really heavy. They're going to still hit their accessories decently hard, but shorter rest periods and a little more more repetitions to get more blood flow, and you can't lift as heavy because your shorter rest period. And then in the third week, the last week, usually like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we just do blood flow and stretching. and that's all. And then we'll go into it. Some people will take a few weeks off, not train, and then afterwards they'll take 2 weeks to 2 months off before they start training again. After 3 weeks of not training a particular strength, you can lose up to 15% of its capacity. Every week after that, you're losing a higher percentage of the capacity of that. So obviously, we compete on Saturdays usually, and we're back in the gym training Monday. If you make the majority of your attempts and you you just deload properly, you should be back in the gym Monday, and then we're not losing anything. Let's say we wait.
And
Let's say we wait 2 weeks after the meet to get back. And let's say we compete 4 times a year. Okay. So now that's 8 weeks. 10 years of competing as a powerlifter, you've lost 80 weeks on your competitor of progressing forward. That's a big problem.
big problem. And is so this protocol that you're talking about, obviously you're doing that with your top athletes. People need they need a little bit of a break because they're lifting tremendous loads, right? You
Yep.
probably wouldn't do that with your Sally who wants to compete in their first powerlifting competition, or little Johnny who's going down the road to do a local CrossFit competition. They need to train, right? They need to train. They don't need to deload for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. They need to
Yeah.
get better at the thing, but there is an opportunity cost that comes with that. And every time that somebody puts a load on their back, that's 700-800 pounds, there's an opportunity cost there. So Shane, is careful to make sure that his athletes are, fully recovered and that they're not going into competitions with any unnecessary wear and tear.
Now,
For my CrossFit athletes,
yeah,
though, I just, they're not,
they're different. There's a difference.
they're
with them,
different,
too.
right? They're different. Their conditioning is higher. They're going to go crazy if they don't do things. So I will keep them running pretty much all year. I just back off on the
So,
Metcon volume as we get closer.
correct. We have to look at what are the differences between the sport. The highest form of intensity is a 1 rep max. So the highest neurological effect on you would be a 1 rep max. So this is where my powerlifters who are moving massive weights, they need that deload time because they need their nervous system to come back online and be at 100%, right? A CrossFit athlete is doing a lot of work, but they're not spending that much time at that top 1%, that highest level of output. So their nervous system is not as affected as much. And what I find with them is, in all honesty, when you're a games competitor, a lot of games competitors have a lot of little tweaks and a lot of little things going on in their joints. They need the constant movement and constant blood flow. I made the mistake. I mean, as coaches, we all make mistakes. I tried deloading one of my high level CrossFit competitor for the same period of time as a power lifter, and they just felt stiff. And like, you go to the games and it was like the first 2 days was kind of like getting back into it, and then they killed it after that. But I learned after that, I'm like, okay, take them right up to it. Let's just pull out the stuff that'll affect them neurologically and pull out stuff that's hard to recover from. But we keep pushing them pretty good, we were still getting workouts in, 4 days out from the games, 3 days out from the games.
And sport athletes and deloading is another interesting one, right? Like you'll see, I just remember growing up playing football and we would lift hard all year, and then it would come to football season and then we would stop lifting hard.
Yeah.
Lifting kind of like,
Big
we
mistake.
would still lift, but it was, it was kind of like an afterthought. And you see that mentality still at the highest levels of sport, where people stop lifting heavy because it's sports season and they don't want to have any unnecessary risk. And it's like, hey, 1 rep max is inherently very safe. Like, you do everything that you're supposed to, the weight is not going to hurt you, right? But if you're going to make a mistake on that bar, that's going to have, I don't know, your knee's going to come in or your back's going to round or something, that was probably going to happen out there on the field too.
Yeah.
So
I tell
it's a good
people
place to find out.
Yeah, I tell people who are not sure about this, like strength, people who are like one of the high school athletes or college or even pro football players as an example. If you don't believe me, what I would tell you to do is do the training we lay out, the heavy days, the speed days, and all the stuff we lay out for the athlete in the off season. When season starts, and start playing games. Treat your game as your max effort. Do your speed work and do all of your accessories. If you measure that with a 10 unit at the beginning of the season, when you hit your PRs, your maxes, at the end of the season, your PR should still be the same and the bar speed should be the same. So if at the end of season, test out your bar speed with the weight you did at the beginning of the season, it should be the exact same bar speed. And if it is, then test the next week your maxes and they'll be the same. You didn't lose anything off of it. Now, some people go, well, yeah, but I didn't progress forward. Everybody in football who
But you
doesn't do this
also
goes
didn't progress
backwards.
backwards.
Yeah, because what happens is athletes take time off, and what's the most important game of the year? The last game. What are people usually at the last game of the year? Their smallest and weakest and slowest. How does that make sense? If you were literally just to maintain your size, strength, and speed at the end of the year, and everybody else loses 10 to 15%, you're going to crush everybody. Okay? You're going to think you're faster even though you're not, because everybody's slowing down by the end of the season and you're not slowing down. So you're actually picking up speed on people. That's how you do it.
And you're going to stay healthier longer, and
Yeah.
that's the one thing that really sucked me into all this is after, I had my accident and broke my back and was all messed up. This is the one thing that kept me, moving at
Yeah.
the end of the day. And I see people who were in similar accidents and they're not doing as well. Their quality of life is substantially diminished. So everybody, every sport, every athlete, everything's working against the clock. You're only going to do this thing for so long. So when it's all said and done, what's quality of life going to look like? Is there programs out there that you could potentially get a faster squat PR with? Yeah, sure. Right. But are you going to be able to run that 6-12 weeks out? Are you going to be able to do that 3 years from now? This system, again, time and time again, has proven itself able to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and wrap it up there?
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I
I
say
cut you off. There's a little delay.
The only other system or only other way to train, the other ways to train, the only way it would make you better, and it is sometimes they will make someone better faster than I will. Okay, I don't want to say that because I have confidence in what I do. What I would say is programming. Programming from someone else might get someone up to speed a little quicker who I'm not working one-on-one with, because I have to give them programming to see where they're at and see what they can do, see videos and get feedback. If they run into a system that they hammer the one muscle group that's a glaring weakness on them, sure. I'm trying to structurally build you all the way around. I'm trying to build speed, build conditioning, injury resiliency, and trying to get your movement quality up. So you might just take off and blow any other ones out, but if you get a little faster, stronger somewhere else, stronger, faster, it's only going to last for first couple months. After that, it's not, and you're not going to keep progression forward, but you're going to keep that very small foundation. Like I said, we want a bigger foundation, taller pyramid. The foundation stays smaller, progression stops. We
want the results to continue for as long as possible too, 100%. Not just for some 6-week cycle.
Yep, 100%, man.
Awesome, brother. Well, it was good catching up, and let's do it again next week.
Sounds good, man.
All right.